What's good, guys? It's Ilsun 4K, and welcome to yet another episode of Terror Talk here on ILL-TV, where if it's pop culture, it pops up here. And today we're going to talk about a really unique movie that has a polarizing effect on all audiences that seem to watch it, Skinamarink. Yes, it's a movie called Skinamarink, and it's not like Skidamarinky-Doo, that TV show we used to watch in the late 80s and early 90s on Nickelodeon, if you're old enough to remember that. We never actually get a meaning of what this means. It's just called Skinamarink. And I gotta tell you, it's a really unique film, and it almost reminds me of the Blair Witch Project in the fact that it's not a found footage film, but it's shot in a very unique way and done in a very unique way, and it was shot on only a $15,000 budget. Yes, $15,000. You can't even get a new car for that much money these days, 9 times out of 10. And it grossed $2 million in its 2-month-long theatrical release between January and February. So again, much like the Blair Witch Project, it was shot on nothing, and it made everything. Really impressive. The thing about this film that really impresses me is the fact that it was actually shot in the childhood home of the director, Kyle Edward Bell, and he had this whole thing filmed in one shot of his house. That's right, it's filmed in just his house. That's it. No other places. It's not a film you really watch. It's an emotion you experience, and it really takes you back to the days when you were a kid and afraid of the dark, worried about, well, a boogeyman that might be in the house with you, and where your parents are, and running around confused and scared. But imagine if it wasn't just in your head, it was actually happening. And that's why this movie is like nothing I've ever seen before. I mean, it is truly a unique affair. There's no music, there's no nothing. It's like a half found footage, half point of view movie. And I really can't explain it too much in the intro, so you're gonna have to watch this whole review to see what it's about. I'll talk about the plot without giving any spoilers out, and then I'll talk about the perspective of it, and of course we'll do a nice little outro, because that's just how we do here at ILL-TV. And I really can't go too in depth with this film, because like I said, it's like nothing I've ever seen before, and you really, really should check it out, even if you think you might not like it. Alright, so I'll get into the plot, which is very unique but very simple. The year is 1995. 2 children, a brother and a sister, Kevin and Kaylee, would like to have a sleepover in their living room together versus in their bedrooms. Their father, who has no problem with this, decides to allow it to happen and decides to sleep on the couch to keep an eye on them, because you know how kids are when they're out of their rooms late at night and running amok in the house, so he does the right thing here as a father, I gotta say. He puts the television on the ground for the kids to be eye level with, and allows them to have toys while they play with it in front of the television, and it's your atypical affair of Legos and Barbie dolls having a good time watching cartoons. Eventually the kids do fall asleep, and from there they wake up in the middle of the night, and they notice the first thing that's very weird is that their father is missing. After that, they hear this loud banging and creaking noise coming from the house, and that's where things go absolutely insane. As the kids decide to go look for their father, they look up on the ceiling and notice that a chair is on the ceiling. Not hanging from the ceiling, but mounted to the ceiling like a chair that would be sitting on the floor as if someone could sit on it up there. Again, it just gets started. From there, the kids decide to go and look for their father, and ultimately, they end up trying to go to the bathroom, and as that happens, they start noticing weird things like the house's doors and windows vanish. Yes, just disappear right in front of their eyes, completely gone. The toilet disappears, and on the way to the back from the bathroom, the kids look up and see a Barbie doll hanging on the ceiling, and it falls down to the ground, and it scares the crap out of them. And that's when things get even stranger as these kids start noticing something is calling their names, both of their names, some sort of entity that they have not yet seen, and it is clearly like a boogeyman to them. And it starts getting even stranger with the things this entity does in the house and the surreal visuals that it has these kids experience, and how it puts them through this really, really tedious, scary affair of being 2 children alone in the dark and not knowing where your parents are, which is one of the most scary things you could ever imagine. The plot is very simple, but very well executed, and the fact that it all takes place inside of one house and has no music or effects is fantastic. Again, you need to see this just to see how they pull off such an amazingly simple plot and turn it into this crazy, diverse, unreal affair. I mean, I don't even have words to explain it, because I can't say too much because it'll give away spoilers, so make sure you really watch this with an open mind, because the plot, again, sounds simple and stupid, but it's absolutely amazing. I kind of had to keep it short and sweet on the plot so that way I didn't give away too much. Something I gotta talk about here is the perspective of this film. This film really does pull you back to the most primal fear you could have, and that's being alone in the dark as a kid and not being able to find anyone to help you, even if you do have a little brother or sister. I don't know about you, but as a kid, I was absolutely terrified of the dark. I mean, afraid to death of the dark. I hated it. the idea that something could be in the room with me that wasn't there when the lights are on, it could come and get me, absolutely was a fear of mine that absolutely captivated me in all the wrong ways. But as a kid, it's hard to tell yourself that there's nothing there that wasn't there when the lights are on, and you'll probably run into something and hurt yourself like that. But this movie really takes the idea of, what if there is something there in the dark that wasn't there when the lights were on? Something that you can't see because you never really see this thing in the movie. It's amazing how quickly it drew me back to that fear as a kid, and watching it and really putting myself back into those shoes, and how well the director Kyle Edward Bell did that in a matter of no time at all. I mean, the movie was a little hard to get started, but it took not even 30 minutes for me to be like, all right, I understand how scared these kids are, because it's like I'm in their pajamas right now. And the craziest part about it is that this entity has a unique way of handling things because of how the uniqueness of the movie is shot. First off, I should say that while some people are calling this a found footage film, it is in fact not a found footage film. There is no acknowledgement of a camera in any way, shape, or form in this, but what there is very unique camera angles and shots, and more importantly, what there isn't is any music or background noise or impact noises to help build attention. It's all shot organically. The only noise you hear is the natural organic noise of the background noise of the television, the cartoons the kids are watching, or maybe the hum of a refrigerator, or something like that. There's nothing about this film that's unorganic in the sense that it's really just shot from two camera angles. The first is these perspective camera angles that could show anything from, like, the corner of a house to shooting down a hallway, static camera angles that do not move with no cameraman. However, the second camera angles do move because they are actually point of view camera angles of the children themselves walking or doing whatever they're doing, be it sitting and watching cartoons or walking down the hallway that was just once a static shot. And it's really well done because it's shot from the height of these children, which, your average kid is 3 feet tall. So you got to figure it makes everything look so big, because you remember when you were a kid, everything looks so much bigger than you remember it as an adult because you were so low to the ground looking up and around. And it really adds to that sense of this fear that these kids have because it makes you feel like the kids themselves. Again, the fact that they use both of these camera angles to scare you is another really cool thing. For example, from the point of view camera angle of the kids, it might show them reacting to the sound of a bang or a creak, which if you were a kid, you remember lying in your bed back in the day and maybe you heard a creak or a bang noise from the house settling or a television, and it kind of spooked you because you didn't understand what that was. There's no way to percept in your mind that a house settles or that a television, after it's not been running and starts to cool down like the old tube televisions, is going to make a cracking noise to settle back into its original shape. And what's really cool is how they use these camera angles to provide even more scary attributes because there are no real jump scares. For example, from the point of view of the children, it might show them leave a room and come back into the room and something completely drastically different has been done. And from there, it might show the static camera angle where the room is empty and there are no kids in it, but it shows this entity moving things around or messing with something or taking something away or unplugging a nightlight, something that can only be seen if you weren't in the room. Again, it's the fact that it has this duality of wanting to be the child and getting out of it, but wanting to be the viewer to see what happens next. You're put into this element of like almost I don't want to say a power struggle, but there's, again, this duality of a morality rate of, do I want to see these kids make it out or do I want to see what's coming next? Because one thing you never see is the entity. You only see what the entity does, and that's really cool, to not see what it is, but what it does, and how it's all executed so flawlessly. Like I said, this really struck a chord to me as a kid because I've been afraid of the dark. I've been wandering around in the dark before. I didn't have any brothers or sisters growing up, so when I was alone in the dark, I was really alone in the dark. These kids have each other, but even then, they don't talk much. There isn't a lot of dialogue in this film. There isn't even like 3 paragraphs of dialogue, even between the kids, because they're so busy trying to keep quiet so that way they don't make any noise. They might ask an outright question, they might ask something to another one, and sometimes this entity will talk to them, but it never says more than a sentence or their name at a time. And it's never very descriptive or very commanding. It's very one-note linear affair. The whole thing is shot and done in such a way that you can't help but, again, feel like you're right there as a child again, in your most primal fear state of afraid of the dark, which was the first thing, like I said, that I was ever afraid of. And that's why I gotta say, how this movie was shot and done is like nothing I've ever seen before, because while I've seen plenty of found footage films and plenty of low-budget horror films, there is nothing about this that is high budget at all. It's literally shot like someone left cameras around the house, and there's no shot of anybody above the waist for that matter. You never see what these kids look like. You see the back of the parents' heads maybe once in the whole film, and that's it. I mean, what absolutely is done with this film is genius and artistic and scary all at once. And like I said, I'll say it again, never seen anything like this, and you absolutely have to experience it, even if it's something you might not be into, just to say you saw it. So overall, I gotta say my closing thoughts on this movie are, I fucking loved it. But I see why this is really a polarizing movie for audiences everywhere. A lot of people compared it to the Blair Witch Project, not because of the fact of how it's shot, but because of the fact that it was maybe overhyped and it seemed scarier than it was going to be, and people just weren't into it. I gotta tell you, funny story about the Blair Witch Project. My dad took me to see that movie when it was in theaters in the late 90s, and he had to walk out of the theater because he told me, he's like, I can't do this. I don't even know what's going on. This doesn't make any sense. There's no, what's the scary part, you know? And I feel like a lot of people could watch this movie and get that feeling about it, because to some people, those things that I mentioned, this whole review about being alone in the dark and all that stuff, just weren't scary to them. There were things that they just didn't experience. And I can understand how that would make this movie really hard to follow, because in addition to that, this movie is a little hard to follow if you're not ready for what it is. It took me a little bit of time to get into it, but around the 20-minute mark when I figured out what was going on, and the 30-minute mark where all the crazy stuff really starts happening, I was immediately, like I said, drawn back to that primal fear of being a kid alone in the dark and unaware of my surroundings, and it really reminds me of almost like a fever dream you would have as a kid. It feels like a fever dream you would have as a kid, where you wake up and you can't find your mom or your dad, and there's something chasing you around the house or terrorizing you, or creepy things are happening. And it's a dream I've definitely had before, and I bet a lot of people have, but at the same time, a lot of people haven't. So I think it's something that you really need to see to appreciate. And to be quite honest with you, it's one of those things, like I said, that I don't know if I could watch this movie again, because the first time around it was an experience. The second time around it's going to be a movie. I know what to expect, and it's not something I've never seen before. It's something I'm familiar with. It's very easy to see how this movie, like I said, has a straight divide, and I think it's a really good sign of a very unique and artistic film, be it horror or anything else. Because when everybody loves a movie, it's a great movie. When everybody hates a movie, it's a bad movie. But when it's right down the middle and people aren't sure how to feel about it, such as, I don't know, say the Venom film, it's usually a pretty decent film, and I know I'm going to get beat up in the comments for saying I like the Venom movie, but, you know, it's one of those films where it was right down the middle. People liked it, some people didn't. Critics might like it, folks might hate it. It's something that really has its own lane. It's very unique and very well done, and the shooting style of it, again, is like nothing I've ever seen before. And the fact it's so low budget at $15,000 to the point where it doesn't even have a soundtrack or any music is just so well done. There's a lot of surreal imagery in this, a lot of freaky stuff that happens that's just not explainable, and watching the entity do its thing and watching the kids experience what it's doing and not knowing what it's going to do is all very encapsulating of an experience that you have to really enjoy and understand before you go into it, or at least enjoy and understand once you realize what's going on and how the director, Kyle Edward Bell, went for shooting this film. So again, guys, something you should definitely see just to see it, even if you think you might not like it, because we don't got anything like this coming out. And in this year, horror has just been doing so great in the last year and a half, I should say, with things like Terrifier really resurging the genre and making it fresh and new again, that people are really trying bold and brave new things. And this is one of those films. So do me a favor, if you have seen this movie and you liked it, tell me in the comments below why you liked it, and if you have seen the movie and you didn't like it, make sure you tell me in the comments below why you didn't like it, because I want to hear your opinion on this. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. And again, thank you for joining me for another episode of Terror Talk here on IllTV. I'm IllSun4K, and before I go, I would like to recommend that you check out my friend on Instagram, I Was Myself for Halloween. The girl who does the actual intro music to all my videos that you hear is doing actually a cancer benefit show for someone who has some ailments that are unfortunately happening, and they're actually doing a live show on their Instagram, on their YouTube, of showcasing artists, myself included. It's mostly bands and stuff like that, but I'm actually submitting a really funny skit where I have an obsession with the Super Mario jump. But speaking of horror and Terrifier, David Howard Thornton, yes, that David Howard Thornton, the guy who plays Art the Clown in Terrifier, is doing a special introduction for this because he was reached out to and really did an awesome thing and decided to contribute his name to this. And I'm so excited to be a part of something that he's a part of, as well as all the other bands. So make sure you check her out on Instagram, I Was Myself for Halloween, and hit them up if you want to have any music work done. But make sure you check out, I believe it's March 25th, youtube.com/Escobar Arts, and you'll see all this cool stuff that's happening. Make sure you check out the YouTube anyway, like and subscribe to their channel, so that way you can stay on top of this. There's a lot of cool metal bands that are involved. I myself have a skit, like I said, and I'm just so happy and proud to be a part of something that's for a benefit that helps someone with some health issues right now, because we can all use all the help we can get right now. So remember, guys, there's a light that never goes out. It only goes away, and it comes back the next day. And that light is the sun. Thank you for joining me here on Terror Talk. I'm IllSun4K, and this is Ill TV, where if it's pop culture, it pops up here.